Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to practice a topic which is a part of your writing section and it is basically asked in class 12. Now since the marking scheme and blueprints have changed, so we would like to discuss about invitation formats and type. So it is extremely important to first understand what an invitation is. So here when I talk about invitation, an invitation is written or spoken request for inviting guests. Now, whenever you have a function at home, in school, in your organization, or anywhere else, and technically verbal communication is not the only way how you invite people. We need to invite them formally as well. So such formal invitations, such formal letters or printed cards, these come under the category of invitation. And there could be events like weddings, birthdays, inaugurations, even annual functions, sport events, etc. Now we'll read about the types of invitations. They're basically categorically in large way. There are two types of invitation. Number one is the formal invitation, and number two is the informal invitation. Informal invitation, we again divide it into two parts. Number one is a printed card. There are some printed kind of invitations. You must have seen whenever there is a birthday or any other event, you get some really designed cards, invitation cards. So those are the printed cards. And the other is a formal invitation card, which is actually could be a synonym of a formal letter. So formal letter and formal invitation are kind of similar things. So we have two types for formal. Number one is a printed card. Number two is a formal invitation itself, formal letter. And second is an informal invitation. So first we are going to study about formal invitations. Now here, as I told you, formal invitations are of two types, printed cards. So let us now understand why and when are these printed cards used. So these printed cards, they are requests which are generated and designed and printed on invitation cards for bulk invitations. For example, if you have to invite your colleagues, guardians, neighbors on any big social event, and they must be social, they must not be informal events. Some social bulk events, and whenever you have to invite people who are your colleague, guardian, neighbors, such people, when you invite on a large scale, we send them printed cards. Now, there is one very significant point to remember here that in such cases of printed cards, the name of the invitee is not written. Person who is inviting, his or her name is not mentioned. Now, we get back to the second type of formal invitation, which is a formal letter, as I told you. Number one is a printed card. Number two is a formal letter of invitation. Now, this formal letter, you give it to formal people who come from any kind of profession or of professionalism. For example, you send it to chief guest, judge, you send it to the guest of honor, etc. So the only difference between printed cards and formal letter is printed card is shared with the bulk invitation, and people, the category of people to whom we share such kind of cards are colleagues, guardians, neighbors, etc. On the other hand, formal letters are sent to judges, a chief guest or guest of honor. And now we'll go back to the second type of invitation, which is the informal invitation. And it is used to invite your friends, relatives for small gatherings. So now if you ask me the difference, because a question may pop up in your mind, if why are printed cards used and why are informal letter used when we are giving it to relatives and neighbor and friends. So the only difference between printed cards and informal letter is the number, is the quantity. In printed cards, the quantity is huge, and in the informal letter, the quantity is comparatively low. That means for small gatherings, a birthday occasion, some private occasions, a small party or a celebration. Now, it's very important to understand what is the marking scheme when you're going to write, be it a formal invitation, be it a printed card, or be an informal invitation. It is very important to understand that the format here is whatever the format, like are you writing it in a block? Are you following the sequence of steps? 1 mark is for the format. For the content, whatever you are writing, it is for 2 mark. Expression and organization of ideas is basically for 1 mark. Spelling and grammar, again, yet very important point. It is again for 1 mark, and total it becomes for 5 marks. So you need to be very particular with these 4 points in order to get full marks, especially for the content and format. Now, there are certain things which you must keep in mind while you are writing any kind of invitation. Even if it's a printed card, it's a letter, it has to be, these points have to be taken care of. Now, first, whenever you are writing an invitation, it has to be in a box, must be enclosed in a box. Inline commas are allowed. End line punctuations must be skipped. You should clearly remember the 5 W's. They are who, that means who's the host, who's writing the invitation, what, why is the invitation being written, for what purpose? Is it a birthday? Is it a marriage? Is it a opening? Is it a business request? Example. Whom. Now for whom is the occasion? Who is being invited? When exactly? When is the date? When is the time? Then it is where, basically it means venue. So you have to categorically mention these 5 things in the content. Even if you miss any one of the detail, the invitation will be considered as incomplete. Be strict with the word limit. You all are supposed to understand that invitation cannot be written like a speech or a debate. It has to be minimum of 50 words. Also, it is written in the third person. Formal invite printed cards are written in third person. Informal is not written in third person. It has to be mentioned here. It has to be polite and courteous. Language has to be polite. Months to be written in words. For example, here it's written 1st January 2022. It has to be in the simple present tense. With the tenses, you need to be really careful. No signatures are required, unlike in few of the letters. When you send a letter to someone, you write down, you sign, you're asked to sign. In case of invitations, signatures are not required. Name of VIP is included in VIP invitations, very, very important. VIP invitations are also required. Name of invitee not written in invitation, but on the envelope. As I told you, when you're writing the invitation, formal invitation, name of invitee would not be written. Now, there are certain expressions used when you're writing an invitation. You should always use such kind of expressions. For example, cordially request the pleasure of your company, solicit your gracious presence, request your benign presence, invite you to join, cordially invite you to, request the pleasure of your company, seek the pleasure of your company or presence, cordially request the honor of your presence. So you should always use, if you want to use other expressions, like I told you, for the expressions, you have got marks. So you can use these expressions and other expressions as well. Now, this is how the format of invitation is written. The very first thing that you should write is name of the host. Second is the formal phrase of expression or the invitation. Third has to be the purpose, reason of invitation. Fourth is name of the honoree. For example, if you're inviting someone for a birthday party, so the birthday boy name has to be mentioned. If you are inviting it for the groom, then the groom name has to be mentioned. Day, date, and time of function or event has to be mentioned. Venue with complete address. It should not be house number dash, etc. So venue has to be a complete address. Complimentary close, thankfully, yours sincerely. That way you have to close it. RSVP is extremely important in case of chief guest. When you're inviting some authorities or dignitaries, you always write RSVP. Full form is respond if it pleases you. So basically you're asking for respond. However, for invitations, we do have replies. That format I'll be sharing in a different video. So as of now, you will always write RSVP. When you have a dignitary or a special chief guest or a guest of honor, you're sending an invite to any of them. So you always mention RSVP. Address of the host, naturally, who is sending the invitation, the address has to be mentioned, and the contact number. Now for printed card, you need to understand only 2 very, very important points. Now this previous, if I tell you, it was regarding the general thing. You can also include these in printed cards and formal invitations. So it is not necessary that this is followed only in the formal invitation. It is also followed in the printed cards. Now for printed cards, what two things maximum you will take care of is printed card invitations are written in simple present tense and no punctuation. You must have seen in printed cards which usually do not have any kind of punctuation, no comma, no semicolon, no full stop, etc. Date of issuing invitations are not written on the printed card, like the date is basically not mentioned. Now, this is one example of printed card when you say, and here let us read first of all from the first line here. It says, the principal, staff and students of Delhi Public School as an soul request the pleasure of your company on the occasion of its 30th Foundation Day. Now, this is exactly what we have learned. Number one is the name of the host. Number two is the expression, which is request the pleasure of your company on the occasion of. Now, why and what occasion is required? It is 30th Foundation Day to be held on Wednesday, 10 December. Date, time, and venue also. From 7 p.m., which is the time, venue is in Aurobindo Auditorium, DPS, Asansol. Now, the auspicious occasion will be graced by the benign presence of chief guest, honorable name of the guest, as I told you in the previous place also. If you see, remember this slide, we had just discussed the point number 9 and point number 4, name of the honoree and address of host. So name of the honoree here is Honorable Mr. Justice XYZ, Asansol High Court. Now finally, the name of the host, address of the host, and a complimentary clause. Complimentary clause here is with best wishes, name of the host, address of the host, DPS Asansol family, and phone number is mentioned. And I already told you, when you're inviting a chief guest or any dignitary, you will always mention RSVP. And it can be on either side. It is not mandatory that you write it on the left hand side, it could be on the right hand side as well. So this is one example of a printed card invitation. Now we'll come back to the formal letter, formal invitation letter. So what is the step here? You will write the sender's address, you will write the date, then the receiver address. It is, I think, the same format that we use in a letter. Next is the subject, then the salutation, then the body of letter, complimentary clause, and your name. At the end, you're going to write your name. Do not forget to write the name. Now, in case of informal letters and formal letters, there is only one significant difference, which is in informal letters, you do not mention the receiver's address. Just see, point number 1, in the previous slide, the sender's address, it is sender's address as well. Date is same, salutation is same, body of letter is same, but here in the formal we had after date the receiver address, but here after date we directly have salutation. So for case of informal invitation letter, you will keep in mind that you would only write sender address, date, and salutation. Receiver's address is not mentioned, then the body of letter, name of the event, complimentary clause. Now in the body of letter, you also have to mention date, time. I have not mentioned it here, but every date, time, why, when, who, everything has to be mentioned. Then a complimentary clause, writer's name, contact number, etc. So up till now, we have read about that there are two types of invitation, formal invitation and informal invitation. Formal invitation, we have printed cards and formal letter. There are two types, then another is informal invitation letter. So I hope these points are clear to you. You should go through the slides. Every information is mentioned along with the marking scheme. You just have to understand and write the invitation in your own words and be very particular with the speed limit. So I hope this topic is clear to you. We'll be meeting next with another topic, which is reply to the invitation. Till then, have a great day. Keep liking my videos. Do share and do subscribe. Thank you so much.